circumstantial.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why do you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the well-run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why do you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders. Pushing up just like these boulders. See conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice. Seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers could give out.
Politics and sinners, they all the same.
Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up, won't play the role. Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the receipts. I just want all of humanity to be free and clean this.
Good morning, and welcome to the Urban Conservative Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about fraud, budget cuts, and self-defense. The truth they don't want you to hear. But before we get into all that, I want to get into Mashawn and look at you. I know y'all probably going to be like, damn, I ain't seen Buddy in a long time. I've been following like TikTok for a while, and I know that he had just recently got back into music. So I wanted to play his new song, Look at You, Mashawn, and we'll be right back right after this.
Baby, you 99 created plan. Soon as your water falls, I just need a drink. Wanna put you in your place right here, right now. So let's slow it down and relax and get closer. Then I'll take it out, let you taste your composure. Know what you doing, take a seat and I fold her. Pretty brown eyes, you got it sold up. Ooh, I just love to look at you. Look at you, oh, look at you. Baby, look at you, oh, look at you. 'Cause you're so beautiful when you put on a show. There's nothing stopping you. Every time I look at you, oh, look at you. Hey, baby, pardon me, but I like what I see. Can I have it? You on top of me, fucking up these sheets, getting active. Yeah, you know there's nothing stopping you.
That was Mashawn. Look at you. Independent music, you know what I'm saying? But I want to get into what this episode is about, right? And I want to educate people. So I want to talk about 40 Acres and a Mule. I found this documentary
And I want to show you guys also as well. I want to watch it as well. So, but listen to what they talk about when it comes to 40 acres and a mule, because I don't believe that people honestly got the full, what it was about. And that's something that we need to discuss and have discussions about, is because 40 acres and a mule. A lot of people want to talk about, black people have this, black people have that. We have to remember is that black individuals came from, especially black Americans, they came from a nation, a ethnicity, a nationality of indentured servants, chattel slavery, and then we have Jim Crow laws. We were so much along the way that we've had to fight just to be seen. So I want to get into 40 acres and a mule, because I don't believe a lot of people understand when they say 40 acres and a mule, what people are meaning. So with that being said, I want to get into 40 acres and a mule.
It's this land that drew us back here. My grandfather, he wanted better for his children. My father wanted better for his children. And of course we do. That's why they love this land and they hold on to it. They want to pass it to them.
In 1865, the U.S. government promised newly freed black Americans 40 acres and a mule, providing an opportunity for them to build wealth and independence.
Land has always been about freedom, political freedom, physical freedom, economic freedom.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
But that promise was broken again and again and again.
Black farmers and other black landowners have repeatedly been targeted to have their property taken.
Do you think that you would have been that much further ahead if you were one of your white counterparts?
Oh, yes. We would not have lost the land. We would have gotten the loans and the services that all farmers should get through the government.
While some are rediscovering hope in collective action.
We cannot beg other people to give us anything, and that's what freedom is about, the freedom to manifest what we know we deserve.
For others, the struggle continues.
You got to fight for your land. You got to fight to keep it.
Oh my God, I just found out that my data is all over the dark web. So I found this tool that does a scan of the dark web and shows you
40 acres and a mule.
Daddy had lived a good life, up north when he was in Massachusetts. But there was something here that brought him back. And I know it's that desire to farm, the quietness. It's a wonderful place to raise your children, and it still is. My father wouldn't have ever thought that I would come back here and do any farming. He wouldn't have thought anybody would come back, especially me. So you never know. You can't say, well, none of the children are going to come back, so, we might as well sell it. Same thing with even the old tractors. One of the tractors is 80 years old. Daddy could have very easily said, well, I'm going to get rid of these tractors. Nobody's ever going to use them again. But here we are, farming with those same old tractors.
Veteran and retired teacher Mark Smith lives with his wife Janet on the land his family has owned since 1926. Mark's grandfather, a sharecropper, had traded his cotton harvest for these 600 acres during the height of the Jim Crow era.
This is my grandmother, and that's she and Papa right there. Those are the ones who bought this house, bought this property.
And this is your family. This is what came from that.
Right. These are the children and everybody that came from that. This is out in front of the house. This is Daddy, my mother, and all of the children. They were all very successful people. And I know where it comes from. It comes from this land. So, we do everything we can to protect that and hold on to it. Don't sell it, don't give it away, don't let anybody take it.
Land equals freedom in so many ways. Historically, land equaled freedom in the sense that there was physical space, a separation between Black people and people who oppress them. And then being able to use your own expertise to produce resources for your family and be economically independent, that created freedom. People really don't understand the importance of the Black farmer in the African American experience. The Black churches were often on land that had been given by a Black farmer, or the Black schools were located on land that a Black farmer had provided.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
Because enslaved Africans could not own property, it wasn't until 1865 that Black Americans were able to formally request land from the government. But the opportunity only arose after a massacre of newly freed people at the hands of Union General Jefferson C. Davis during the Civil War. In December 1864, Davis took an opportunity to shed himself of the freed people, following his troops to safety at Ebenezer Creek. He got his soldiers across the creek using pontoon bridges, but stranded the freed women, children, and elderly on the other side, despite a Confederate cavalry following close behind.
The best figure that we can come up with is that hundreds of people apparently drowned in the creek trying to get across. In other words, they chose death over slavery. The eyewitnesses that saw what happened at the creek were absolutely horrified. And so it becomes this huge public relations disaster for the Lincoln administration. Here is, again, an army that's supposed to be liberating people, and it's causing the deaths of hundreds of people. So when Sherman takes Savannah in mid-December of 1864, Secretary of War Stanton ends up coming to Savannah, both to investigate what happened at Ebenezer Creek, but then also to figure out what are we going to do with all of these thousands of Black people in the coastal area of Georgia that are now free. So on January the 12th, 1865, that evening, there was a meeting held at Sherman's headquarters, and there were 20 African-American leaders that were invited. Now, all 20 of these African-American leaders were either Black ministers or Black lay leaders.
67-year-old freedman Garrison Frazier, a Baptist minister, acted as the church leader's spokesperson. When asked what the freedmen needed to take care of themselves and maintain their freedom, Frazier replied, "The way we can best take care of ourselves is to have land and turn it and till it by our own labor." 4 days later, General William T. Sherman issued Special Field Order No. 15, which confiscated 400,000 acres of Confederate land and distributed it to freed people in 40-acre parcels. Later, the Army provided some of them with mules.
The idea was to respond to that need for land, respond for that need for economic independence and self-sufficiency, with the idea that eventually they would be able to sustain themselves.
But less than a year after the special order was issued, President Andrew Johnson returned most of the land back to its previous white owners. This is what became known as the broken promise of 40 acres and a mule.
I think this idea of 40 acres and a mule centralized the agrarian traditions of African-American people within the rural South, within the Black Belt. And land, of course, was central to that and central to their economic independence. But it also was the beginning of missed opportunities and unfulfilled promises.
So guys, thank you for coming, and everybody.
Thank you guys for all you are doing.
No, it's every one of us.
It takes a team.
You put that sign in front of your house and you speak up, you know what, you're just as powerful as anything else.
Yeah.
In April 2022, a private railroad company sent letters to the Smiths and other residents of their predominantly Black neighborhood, asking to purchase some of their property. The company has plans to construct a railroad to transport building materials and timber. Around 3/4 of a mile of track would cut through the middle of the Smiths family's property and would sit about 700 yards behind Mark and Janet's house. After the Smiths refused to sell, the company petitioned for eminent domain, a legal practice the government or a private utility can use to seize private citizens' land for just compensation if it's for the public good. The Sandersville Railroad Company claims that the railroad would annually generate at least $1.5 million for the county.
you can see where the markers are and where the train came up through, where it's to come this way.
Right.
And go across. We're on my nephew's property right now.
Right.
We're on my nephew's. It's going to cross his, and then it's going to cross my brother Williams, because he has three tracks here. He's going to go across all 3 of his pieces.
Mm-hmm. In terms of distance, length, what are we talking about here?
It's pretty wide. It's pretty wide. And that's an issue, but that's not the only issue. What about your grandkids and kids and things? They come back here. You got a train. You know, what about people on the train? I mean, just all kinds of reasons we don't want it here. Environmental problem, noise.
Derailment.
Derailment, fires.
Right.
You know, toxic waste. What about waste? What are you going to bring through here? You're going to be bringing any kind of chemicals? And then on top of that, all of this, the value of it, it plummets. You know, it's not worth what it was.
Our sons will inherit something with somebody else's name on it, because it's a lifetime.
It's forever.
It's forever.
We want to keep our property clean and clear, just like it's been for the last 97 years with us, and we're going to fight to keep it that way.
The Sandersville Railroad Company says the new track would be used for 1 round-trip train per day that travels at 20 miles per hour to minimize noise. The company also says it complies with all state and federal environmental guidelines. Land ownership is a crucial tool for wealth building and independence, both of which Black Americans have struggled to attain since being transported to the U.S. against their will centuries ago. The total area of Black-owned farmland peaked over 100 years ago at 16 million acres, but has since plummeted more than 70%, totaling an estimated loss of $326 billion.
Black Americans have been the target of vitriolic racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired their ownership in the land. Some of that manifested itself in extra-legal violence. A substantial number of Black Americans who were lynched were actually upwardly mobile African Americans, both socially and economically. In addition to the extra-legal, there's been any number of technically legal ways in which Black Americans have lost land.
Historically, urban renewal and eminent domain have separated hundreds of thousands of African Americans from their property.
Redlining, the practice of mortgage lenders denying loans to people based on their race or where they live. The promise of aid that fails to materialize is all too familiar to many farmers of color, long subjected to discrimination in government programs.
In the case of Black farmers, the whole process of getting a loan approved was just awful. You had people who were supposed to help you, and these government agencies who didn't and worked against you. In some cases, land would get targeted, and they would help make sure you were not successful and lose it.
With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you'll get your first month free when you join today. Sign up for just $1 down, 24.
My father was murdered by a white farmer who was not prosecuted. I made a commitment on the night of my father's death to stay in the South, which was not what I intended to do, to stay in the South and devote my life to working for change.
In 1969, civil rights activists Shirley Sherrod and her husband Charles founded New Communities, one of the first community land trusts in the country.
We decided that Black people had lost land so much through the years, we wanted to develop a way of not losing the land. So the land would be held in trust, which meant we would all own it. But then the opposition from white people, you know, there were times they would shoot at the buildings. They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
To intimidate you.
Yes, we had a pretty big farming operation going until we ran into droughts in the 70s. So it forced us to go to the local USDA office to try to get an emergency loan like all farmers were getting. The guy said, "You'll get a loan here over my dead body."
Really?
Yes. Put us into a 3-year fight just to try to get a loan with continued drought and not having the money needed to operate the farm in the way that it should have been operated.
So essentially you all were squeezed out of ownership.
Yes, there were programs that they should have been offering us, which would have given us a chance to save everything.
Several reports published between 1965 and 1997 from both federal civil rights committees and a commission group confirmed the USDA has consistently failed to provide black farmers equal access to loans.
Not surprising, black Americans who were farmers began calling the USDA decades ago the last plantation. And black farmers have been saying for the longest time that they were being denied loans that they were totally qualified for.
The nation's African-American farmers are stepping up pressure on federal agricultural officials to end what they say is racism by the government.
In 1997, Timothy Pigford and 400 fellow black farmer plaintiffs filed a class action lawsuit against the USDA. Known as Pigford v. Glickman, it alleged the USDA discriminated against black farmers in its allocation of loans.
We have not done enough. I accept that. We need to pay reparations for documented cases of past discrimination.
In settling the Pigford cases, there was a process set up where individual black farmers had to make their case. Initially, a lot of the farmers were left out of the settlement because of just incredibly poor notice. But you ultimately did have actually 2 rounds of Pigford.
Pigford 1 and 2 settlements added up to more than $2 billion. New Communities members received $13 million, which was used to revive their operation decades after its foreclosure.
It's 1,638 acres. This place was once owned by the largest slave owner and the wealthiest man in Georgia at that time in the 1800s. Now we started planning and looking at how we could take a place that had a bad beginning in terms of slavery and use that to work with our people. And that's what we're busy doing.
While the Sherrods were able to regain what they'd lost, for the other estimated 30,000 plus approved claimants, most received $50,000.
Pigford is not nothing, but the notion that it's reparations, upon closer examination, just doesn't hold water. An economic estimate of the farmland black farmers lost between 1920 and 1997, $326 billion. So when you compare $2 billion from Pigford that was sold as reparations, was sold as making people whole, and you compare it to the level of harm, it's obviously the level of harm is orders of magnitude higher.
A recent analysis found that the USDA provided a disproportionately low share of direct loans to black farmers in 2022. But the department is making efforts to close that gap. In 2022, the Biden administration launched the USDA's Equity Commission, on which Shirley Sherrod serves as a member. $2.2 billion have also been earmarked for farmers who have faced discrimination before 2021, but the funds have yet to be released.
This is our Independence Day, amen? All right.
Black Americans are still finding ways to build generational wealth and create safe havens for their communities, in the same spirit as the Sherrod's Community Land Trust and the black settlements that have developed throughout history.
For us, it's this idea of kujichagulia, self-determination. This idea that as people from in a part of the African diaspora have a responsibility to make our world a better place. And we cannot wait for other people to do it. We cannot beg other people to give us anything. And that's what freedom is about, the freedom to manifest what we know we deserve. Guys.
Ashley Scott, along with Renee Walters and Laura Riley Cooper, are founding members of what started as a collective of 19 black families that bought 500 acres of land together. They are now building a whole new town called Freedom, Georgia.
On our own 502 acres to be celebrating Juneteenth, to see the children, to see the elders, to see all of these people have traveled far and wide to be here, it feels amazing. It feels like freedom. It feels like healing. It feels like love to watch my children play on the dirt, on land that we own, and that our ancestors, you know, prayed for us to be able to have this kind of experience. It means everything. Watch your toes. Collective ownership is powerful. Our ancestors practiced it. So it's almost as if we're tapping into those same successful energies that allowed our ancestors to prosper. And my children are tapping into that energy.
It's important because it creates generational wealth, something that didn't seem obtainable for us as black people. And it's just a way for us to leave something for our children, like build a legacy and just have something like wealth for our children. 3 years ago, I didn't think that I would have 500 acres. So the average person doesn't really think that it's obtainable until you see other people, other regular people going out and buying land. We want to inspire all the black people that we can. Go get you some land and build wealth for your family.
I understand this thing about generational wealth, generational properties. I know that through the years, we did not have the opportunities to get real estate. Right. It was not available to us. Even today, even what's happening right now with this trying to grab our land. Right. You see, this has happened to a lot of people, and it's happened through all the years. And that is the reason that so many black people suffer now in poverty.
I feel that no one owes me anything. I serve a powerful God, a powerful Jesus. I've not suffered. In fact, I am humbled. And I've taught my sons the same thing. I said, God is the great equivocator. Right. If you're looking over your shoulder and you're looking for something, you're not going to find it and you're not going to get it that way. You look ahead.
That is one thing that we got to talk about, you know, is the promise of 40 acres and a mule, because it was so much more than just wealth. It wasn't about income. It was, you know, it was about future generations of having their ancestors, their family members taken care of. And people don't understand, because I look at, you know, where we are now as individuals, as a race, and where we are in this wealth gap, right? And where we are in this wealth disparity. And I don't know if legislation, you know, I will say, I don't want to get into a Democrat about, you know, civil rights and none of this. I just want to go with what we've seen, right? How far are we ahead? How are we ahead as people, as Black Americans? Because I will say this, is that we've gone backwards and not forward. You know, that's the one thing that if we look at data and statistics, right, the more the government is involved in our lives, it's gotten shittier. You know, because I will tell you like this, I'm looking at history, throughout history, and looking at Black American stories. You hear about Black Wall Street. You hear about, even though we were getting our asses whooped in the civil rights era, we were, you know, the Reconstruction, the Jim Crow laws, and people were happy. It was a village. I'm not saying it was better. I'm saying is that there was more unity. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that there was more wealth. And that's proven on paper. Along the way, there has been legislation that has made us getting worse. You know, it's we're going to take care of black people. We're going to take care of poor people. So then they pour all this money, but nothing ever changes. Nothing. That's the one crazy part, is that I want people to remember, is that nothing ever changes. And that's the one thing so I'm going to start today off, and I'm going to talk about feeding our future, right? I'm going to talk about, you're going to hear this news report that was played last night about Amy Bach. And, you know, and that's the one crazy part, is like, a lot of people don't look at this and be like, wait, hold up. Are they serious? Yes, they're serious. And it's like, we got to take it serious as people, of like, everybody's doesn't have our best interest at heart. They have their political affiliation at heart. It's not about us. It's not about us surviving. It's not about us. It's about them winning their next election. And will they be able to get their agenda? Will they be able to get whatever they want passed? You know, that, man, it's like, you know, I don't know. Because there's a lot of shit going on, you know, with Medicare, Social Security, there's just a bunch of shit. But yet, this is the one thing that I honestly feel like people don't want to talk about. And especially when it comes to our state representatives, our state senators, is about feeding our future. You know, that's the one thing, is like, there's so many connections. And if you're tracking the money, that's the one thing that I will say, is that you had to have somebody in your payroll that had some kind of influence in your community, that had legislation power, because the loopholes that these people have been using is wild and crazy, that we're not worried about these billions being spent. I shouldn't even be saying spent, lost, wasted, and nobody really cares. It's more of a talking political point of how do we change this going in the future, but not how do we correct what happened in the past and change that, because this is the reason why our communities look like this.
Tracking the money of the Feeding Our Future fraud, that is the focus once again during trial with Amy Bach, the alleged ringleader of this scheme. Fox 9's Rob Olson is live for us. So Rob, bring us up to speed. What happened in court today?
Well, I got to tell you right off the bat here, the final prosecution witness is now on the stand after the end here of 4 weeks of this trial. It's an FBI forensic accountant who'd been going over purchases that co-defendant Salim Saeed made, expensive cars and properties, and tracking that money that it directly came from these federal meal funds that were meant to feed children. But the bulk of the day was another FBI accountant going over the scope of the fraud and really trying to show that Amy Bach knew about it, knew where it came from, knew how it was being used.
A Feeding Our Future meal site opened in this Lake Street building in April of 2020. At the time, it was the Safari Restaurant. It was one of 4 meal sites along Lake Street. An FBI forensic accountant testified how that number grew into the next year. Eventually, 21 meal sites along a 1.8-mile stretch of Lake Street, all sponsored by Feeding Our Future. The accountant testified that those 21 meal sites were paid a total of $34 million in federal reimbursements, and at one point together claimed to serve 59,000 meals, breakfast and lunch, each day. That the total enrollment for Minneapolis public schools was 33,000 students. It appears that Feeding Our Future is feeding all of MPS students in just that 1.8-mile stretch, testified the FBI accountant. Amy Bach ran Feeding Our Future, and this testimony was meant to show how the fraud grew under her sponsorship. Other evidence meant to show that she knew about about it and even participated. Spreadsheets found on Bach's laptop show that she tracked the massive sums paid to meal sites, along with how much she kept as an administrative fee. Evidence as well of 3 Feeding Our Future employees who were on the nonprofit's payroll, but also running meal sites, that Bach would have been well aware of how much they were getting. Upwards of $20 million went to these 3 Feeding Our Future employees alone, the accountant was asked. Yes. And who was their boss? Amy Bach.
Now, because court was canceled yesterday due to the snowstorm, there will be court tomorrow. And again, this final prosecution witness will wrap up, and then it goes to the defense to start calling witnesses to make their case that these 2 are in fact not guilty.
Man, I will tell you like this. With everything that has came out of Feeding Our Future, there's follow the money. I will say that, track the money, because there was a lot that was spent, right? So everything has been linked to nonprofits that was supposed to help kids, right? Not even just kids, but feeding hungry kids. So instead, what they did was it's not even allegedly. We all know that they ran one of the biggest pandemic era frauds in our country. And we know that $250 million is gone. And it was just lining the pockets. I don't know how much. I think it's like 50 million so far they recouped. But I will tell you this: when Feeding Our Future first came out, it was 444 million. Like, we know it's way bigger. And especially when it came to Medicare, when it came to daycares, when it came to PCAs, peer recovery, it was all just a big sham. It was, oh, we're helping people, but we're really not going to do it, right? Because I will tell you like this, is that on Thursday, an FBI forensic accountant took the stand breaking down the money trail. And let me tell you, this trail is exposing just how deep the fraud went. Fake meal invoices, shell companies, and straight up lies, all while claiming to help kids. That's the crazy part. You use kids. Oh yeah, the Red Wing had some sites. This is the one that I want people to understand, right? Your city was not left out. Your city was not left out. That's the one crazy part, is like, I don't want people to think that your city was left out, because there was people in your city that were getting paid to look the other way. That's the one crazy part, right? They say they had no clue, but I don't believe that, right? I don't believe that, because what really gets me is, where was the oversight? We know that there wasn't one. And how does a quarter, this is what you guys have been boasting, right? So how does $250 million just disappear before someone says, hey, maybe we should check the books? What happened here? It just isn't fraud. It's systemic negligence. And guess who pays the price? Taxpayers. Taxpayers. You know, that's the one crazy part. You know, I see this every day. Oh, we should go for this person. We should go. Wait, follow the connections, man. That's what I want. I honestly want people to do, right? Because I've been asked to help a couple campaigns coming up. And honestly, I'm not really for sure if I will help any campaign. That's just being me. You know what I'm saying? Because I will tell you like this. I'm glad and I'm proud of a lot of people that are out here running and putting their name into politics. But here's my thing of it is, we all need donations to run a campaign, right? And I will tell you like this, we've all seen how the city of Minnesota has been ran. We've seen over billions of dollars being wasted. So I will tell you like this, if Mayor Frey gets another term, if Vital gets another term, we know that Ward 5 will be open. Ellison is gone. Osmond better not win. That's for damn sure. Osmond better not win. And there's a lot of people. I know that Jason Chavez will probably win his district, his ward. Wansley will win her ward. Rainville. I don't know. There's been a lot of shit. I think anybody that's connected to Frey is really on the bubble. And if you've been up here sucking Frey dick, you're on the bubble. I'm just being honest. I'm being honest. And I think our voter polls show that. Our rolls. You know, when you look at the voting numbers to win those 2 districts in 4 and 5. Yeah, I do believe that, you know, Jovan can come over there in Ward 5, and because name stature means something. And not just talking about name stature, but if you have policies, because people shouldn't care about popularity, they should care about how are you going to better their lives? How are you going to better? Because I will tell you like this, most city council members, they're only bettering a certain community. They're not bettering all constituents. They're only bettering a part of their, you know, because I will tell you like this, Ward 4 and Ward 5 in Minneapolis are the shittiest. Now, I'll even go Ward 8 too, in George Floyd Square. You know, those are one of the biggest, 3 biggest monies that bring money in, right? But do they take care of it? Hell no. Because this, I will tell you one thing, is that people have been coming up lately, and we've seen, you know, American experiment, or whatever they want to call themselves. The Republican, you know, they've been spotlighting Mr. Hansen and Bill Glenn have been spotlighting certain bills, right? So there was a bill just the other day, and there's not a House file. That's why I haven't seen it. But Bobby released a bill in Senate for a swank coffee restaurant, whatever you want to call it, with Tito Wilson. And we're like, damn, are they still allowing these fools to do that? Are they still allowing? And you go through the bills, there's a lot of them. There's quite a few. And you're wondering, like, wait, how does that help them? How does that help their community? Because I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Even just with like, you know, somebody came up to me and was like, well, actually, I'm going to talk about this today, is that these budget deficits in our school systems, because I will tell you like this, is that yesterday, not only was it Minneapolis, but St. Paul Public Schools sent out emails that there was going to be some budget cuts next year. And it was going to be some big budget cuts. Because I think Minneapolis is almost like 75 million in the hole for next school year. So one of the things that they're talking about is getting rid of their their special education programs. Now, who does that hurt? What areas does that helps poor and marginal? I'm not going to say just black kids, you know, because it's poor. Because everybody wants to blame the parents. But if the parents don't know any better, that's the one thing that I would tell people I want y'all to understand, is that we're sitting over here screaming that there's people out here graduating that can't read and write, and then y'all expect them to make a difference when it comes to changing their kids' lives or somebody in there that they love. Come on, man. If people aren't educated to do better, how the fuck do we expect them to do better if they don't know any better? Because we got to bring it to them. I'm going to be straight up. Here's the thing of it is, you know, everybody wants to say that quote, you can't lead a horse to water. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You got to make it drink. You know, we say, oh, well, they drunk the Kool-Aid. What Kool-Aid? Because I will tell you like this, a lot of people are just tired. They're tired. They're tired. A lot of people have paid attention, are starting to, they weren't paying attention, and now are paying attention, and they're tired. Because they're sitting here wondering, like, damn, how y'all blaming some parents that, first of all, y'all allowed to get like this? Allowed to get like, I'm going to say this, allowed to get like this, because everybody want to roll their eyes. They want to be a Karen. But when it came down to putting Boo Boo and Tay Tay in check, y'all didn't do nothing because y'all was scared. So y'all can't expect Boo Boo and Tay Tay kids to be running all over them, because We repeat a cycle. We're repeating a cycle. And I'm going to tell you like this. You're going to have legislation that is going to make you correct that cycle, and it's not going to be in a way that we like it. That's why I want people to pay attention. It's not about parties, because I will tell you like this. I'm not neither. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not even a Libertarian or Green Party, none of that, because I will tell you like this. I've been in these Green Party meetings, even in this PPC, the Poor People's Campaign. I don't even know about them, because y'all talking about y'all poor. How can you say you poor, but you had a house? Because most of the poor people I know, they rent. They have an apartment. They don't own a house. They want to get to that dream. So how are you helping others get to that dream, and not others that we started a war, or we started some bullshit over in their country like Haiti or Ukraine or Jamaican or certain part of Africa, or even Chinese and shit like that? No, I'm talking about people that have been over here and that fight every day for a fucking dream, and let's give it to them. Let's give it to them, because people are dying out here for this dream. That's why I wanted to play that 40 acres and a mule this morning, because look at data. Look at data in history. How much land has been stolen from Black? We talk about we on stolen land, right? Y'all talk about we on stolen land. Let's really talk about it. Let's talk about stolen land, because that's stolen. I shouldn't say I don't care about the other shit, because I do, right? What I don't care about is that people don't understand that history. Because before America was America, we had treaties. We had treaties. I'm going to say it again. We had treaties. And because people don't understand those treaties, we can't get mad. We have to go back. This is the one thing that I want people to understand, right? Is when it came to Red Wing and what they were doing on Memorial Park, when they were doing that graffiti about every school year with the graduating class. See, at first I was like, damn, why they stop them from doing that shit? I thought, it would be kind of nice, everybody. But then when I understand, well, there was a treaty. Everybody wants to talk about how what they were doing in Mankato, when they did that, they hung them and did all that shit. But y'all don't want to talk about why. Y'all want to talk about the Native Americans that they were protecting themselves. How y'all going to get mad at people that were protecting themselves? That stood up. That's one thing that I see throughout history. They don't like stories that doesn't make them look like they're the good winners. They're the good guys. No, it doesn't work that way. Just like I've seen a lot of things about what's his name? George Washington, our first president, how he had teeth that were wooden. But actually, to come to know the real truth now is that they were teeth of other slaves. Formers, I shouldn't even say former, because, shit, a lot of people died and they were still slaves. That's what, we look at these last names like Neil or James or Iverson. They're not ours. They're our slave owners, people that owned our ancestors. Right. Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. And do you know what? That's the one thing that I don't understand and I don't know how to convey to people, right? Because you have to look, if you want to correct, because I will tell you like this, right? And I've read Powernomics. I've read a lot of Dr. Claude Anderson, right? So he kind of was the birth of, shouldn't say the birth, but he wrote what we know as, I shouldn't even say what we know because they stole it, affirmative action, right? But he wrote it to be corrective action, not affirmative, because when you affirmed it, you're just affirming bad behavior and growing on from that, right? But if you corrected them actions, you were making it different. You were changing what you were doing. So, and maybe I'm not conveying this right. Maybe it's just my interpretation, my opinion. But it's always been about affirming their actions, about making it better, right? Because we wanted that diversity, equity, inclusion. That's the one thing that I will say. I don't know how many videos I've seen that Black people just wanted to go eat at a nice restaurant where before it was no Blacks were allowed. They wanted to drink water where they couldn't. We just wanted to be accepted. But I honestly believe that through legislation has opened the door to take away from, I shouldn't even say to take away, but you spotlight, it was about women, it was about Black Americans. Now it's about immigration, trans, and it's like, how can Black people ain't even still got it together? Women still don't even have rights. So how are y'all worried about immigration and trans, and we ain't even worried? We ain't even got to the Black, making it okay for the Black people, because they still can't even be Black and not without being judged. And we're not no judge, we're not no jury, we're not the executioner, but still there's certain individuals that like to think they are. And here's one thing that I want to is about the special education cuts in Minneapolis, and I wanted to talk about that and to bring it up a little bit, because we've all seen that, that potentially the Department of Education could close down. They could dismantle it, and that's something that will no longer be a part of funding our public education. So here you are with concerns about possible Minneapolis public schools special education cuts.
Tonight, a Minneapolis teacher says the district plans to make cuts to special education next year. And that teacher says she found out in an email from school leaders.
Now, this comes as the district faces a $75 million budget shortfall this upcoming school year. Fox 9's Mike Manzoni is in Minneapolis tonight. And Mike, she fears those cuts will put vulnerable students at risk now.
She says this is an education issue, of course, but she worries that it's also a major safety concern. Now, this teacher says the district told her and others last month that it planned to take cuts to special education for the upcoming school year. She says the email warned her that student-teacher ratios would jump from 8-to-1, where they are now, to as high as 12-to-1. She claims that's because the district plans to cut special education teaching positions as well as critical support staff. The teacher did not show us that email, saying her union advised her against it. The teacher, who didn't want to show her face or use her name, fears cuts could put special education students at risk.
We're not going to be able to give our students, that immediate one-to-one attention that students in our specialized classrooms need. They will unexpectedly run out of school buildings, run out of classrooms. They might engage in self-injurious behaviors such as biting or pulling their hair. And special education assistants are sort of our frontline folks that intervene when those behaviors happen.
And the district did not deny that it planned to cut positions, saying that it hadn't finalized the budget yet. That will happen in June. Meanwhile, the district did say that special education in the coming school year will actually get $3 million more in funding, though it didn't say where exactly that money would go. We're live in Minneapolis tonight. Mike Manzoni, Fox.
That's crazy. Because now, while fraudsters are getting rich off of government money, Minneapolis public schools are planning on cuts to special education. That's right, funding for kids. Now, you weren't trying to cut Feeding Our Futures funding when they were wasting and being fraudulent with the kids. And now we're seeing that, kids can barely write, they can barely read, there's no arithmetic. You're teaching all kinds of bullshit when it comes to schools. And so now it's like the support that is really there for kids is on the chopping block. So a teacher came forward this week saying MPS is getting ready to slash special ed programs. So let's think about this. Where does the money go? If they're cutting support for students with disabilities, but still find money for administrative bloat, something isn't adding up. And if you're a parent, this should have fired you up. These cuts will hurt the most vulnerable students, kids who need smaller class sizes one-on-one help and extra resources just to keep up. So we definitely need to do something differently. We have to do something that takes care of, our people, our communities, our neighbors, because nobody else is going to care for them. Nobody else is going to sit there and be like, you know what, let's do the right thing, because we are actually, hurting kids and they don't really care. Another thing that I want to get into is the budget surplus, right? Because we all seen that it was there, and now it seems like it's gone. And what I wanted to talk about is how much is this funding, is this budget deficit actually going to hurt Minnesotans? And actually, it's probably going to hurt us a bunch. Man, it's really gonna, I feel like the programs that were to help people aren't there, and they need to be there, right? So I want to get into of how much Minnesota's budget is supposed to shrink, and actually we knew it was in the tens of billions, and now it's in the negatives. So
economic uncertainty. State budget officials forecast a surplus of $456 million for the next two-year budget cycle. That's a $160 million lower than prior estimates. It gets worse for the following 2 years with a forecasted deficit of $6 billion. Esme Murphy is at the Capitol with a budget outlook filled with uncertainty for both parties.
Well, the devil will be in the details.
The normally understated Commissioner of Management and Budget didn't hold back on the impact of federal cuts.
If federal action meant that we would lose those resources, the impact to the state budget could really be devastating.
Governor Tim Walz says the president is to blame.
But what's clear in this budget picture, and you just heard it, is that there is a storm at the federal level, and that storm is Donald Trump. That's the thing that's changed between November and today's numbers.
But Republicans say the current budget threat is not on Washington, but on Minnesota Democrats.
Democrats in the state, as you have heard, want to go ahead and blame anyone else for the damage that has happened to our state budget.
Republican House Speaker Lisa Demuth says it's a case of I told you so.
We had been warning over 2 years that this was not going to be sustainable, that we couldn't have excess spending and raising of taxes and fees in this way, or we would be headed for a deficit.
Democratic legislators say at the moment, without the federal cuts, the state is in good financial shape, that the president is the problem.
We together have faced worse economic positions in the past, but never in our history have we had to do that work up against a president who seems hell-bent on crashing the American economy.
Amidst all the uncertainty and disagreements over who is to blame, state Democrats and state Republicans are going to have to start working together soon. They have to pass a balanced budget, or the state could shut down as soon as July 1st. With photojournalist Mike Sternberger, Esme Murphy, WCCO News at the Capitol.
The legislature will have to agree on a budget by the last day of session, which is May 19th. If they don't, lawmakers will have to go into special session.
Now, will they agree on a budget? I don't think they honestly will. I don't think they will agree on a budget that will be good for everybody. It'll be good for their parties, right? I want to play a couple of things, right? It's about, this is Tim Walz. This is the budget the forecast, right? This was released yesterday, but I want to play a little bit of this press conference, whatever you want to call it. He did it. This is the raw video. Nothing's really been taken out. But I want to watch this, and just to see how much finger blaming is done that the Democrats and Governor Walz does to something that could happen in the future, is a maybe, and then we've seen all this fraud and waste in the past that it seems like the Democrats don't want to do anything about. They would just choose to ignore it. And I don't believe that's the best answer, because we have to have some type of accountability to get to unity.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you to Minnesota Management and Budget Commissioner Campbell, Minnesota State Budget Director Mingy, and State Economist Dr. Becker. In these unsettled times, there's a lot of work that their team is putting in to make sure we get these numbers and get them correctly. And I'll say what I stood here in November and said, and it holds true, maybe more so now. Minnesota's put our money into things that invested to improve people's lives: public education, tax cuts for the middle class, feeding our kids, education, and innovation in our business community. The challenges you just heard require us, when we put out the original budget, and it is now more important than ever that we implement that, a responsible, measured, honest budget that tackles our challenges at the state level. But what's clear in this budget picture, and you just heard it, is that there is a storm at the federal level, and that storm is Donald Trump. That's the thing that's changed between November and today's numbers. The uncertainty and the destructive chaos is one thing. We walked in here, we talked about the tariffs, and during that time now, we're hearing that some of the things from the USMCA will be exempted from this. This is chaos. It's nonsense. It's not how you run any business, let alone the federal government, and the impact on states is immense. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you how he's going to act. I can tell you yesterday I had conversations with our neighbors and our biggest trading partners, Premier Canoe in Manitoba and Premier Ford in Ontario, and the havoc it's wreaking on their people is being felt. They are going to have to respond accordingly, and the states are going to be put into that situation. Now look, I know Donald Trump doesn't care about balancing budget. His proposals add $8 trillion to the federal budget. You heard this numbers up here, and I think you're going to get an opportunity to hear some of these leaders up here. I'm going to give a shout out to some of the members of the Republican caucus in the Senate and the House who put Minnesota above politics and wrote a letter that clearly described what the Medicaid cuts would do. I don't believe they agree with me on this. I don't believe they will agree necessarily that the budget is exactly where it's at. But we do have to agree on some facts. Minnesota pays more in federal government, and the destructive way that these cuts are being implemented will negatively impact, and you heard that, 42% of Americans' children. All for the reason to give tax cuts to the wealthiest folks, some of them who are in charge of making the cuts. It's insanity. Here in Minnesota, we don't do things that way. We've balanced 3 budgets in this administration. We've created record surplus, growth in the economy, through a downturn, through a global pandemic. We've done it bipartisanly in the past. But the reality is this: we have a solid budget, we have surpluses now, but we have some cost drivers over the horizon. So making sure that we're curbing the increases while delivering those services is going to be absolutely critical. You heard that laid out about where the numbers are. You saw what the inflationary impact would have on that. I really appreciate when I heard Commissioner Campbell say this is not the rainy day. That historic amount that we have in the fund, that's there. The corrections we're talking about, 13 states look over the horizon. 37 states would only show you those first 2 columns. If you just looked at those, everything's fine. $2 billion surplus, everything's fine. The over the horizon, especially in some areas that we can contain costs while still delivering services, keeps us AAA bond rated. It keeps the growth that we're seeing both in population and in business startups, real wealth, and the opportunities of innovation. So we've got an opportunity here to tackle these things. We have an opportunity because we've seen it bipartisanly. Folks in the House and Senate know that we need to watch what the federal government's doing around Medicaid. We need to take care of our most vulnerable. We need to continue to invest in those things that make a difference in people's lives. And when we do so, we end up year after year, balanced budgets, AAA bond rating, and we're going to be able, in this budget that I put forward, is to cut taxes for the middle class, the first ever sales tax cut, and we're going to be able to implement a very aggressive R&D tax credit that will continue to spur the innovation that we're seeing. We were in the Netherlands last week where we saw Philips Corporation make one of their first commitments back into the United States, investing in Plymouth in technology around their medical devices and upstream. We're talking about, and we're in Rotterdam, where we're seeing sustainable aviation fuel up to scale. And the place in the United States that's most apt to be able to do that right now is right here in northwest Minnesota and connected to the Delta hub at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. Those are things that continue to grow the economy. So we need to get a budget done. We need to get a responsible budget done. We need to look to 28, 29 to curb some of the increasing costs while at the same time continue to invest in the things that helps Minnesota grow. So again, as I would say, that basically the only thing that's changed since November is Donald Trump's chaos to the economy. It changes day to day. It provides the uncertainty that we don't need. And I saw it in Cannon Falls, where we saw our ag producers deeply concerned, and their Canadian counterparts just simply stated the facts. Fertilizer costs are going to cost about $8 an acre for our producers on corn and soybeans because of the potash and the things that the Trump administration has put into place. I think when we see it with our energy costs, and again, talking to the premiers of Manitoba, we receive over 1,300 megawatts of power from Manitoba. It's really important. If we aren't able to get it from a friend where we negotiated a fair price and they're unable to continue to deliver that, our power producers are going to have to go out on a market, and we won't have the leverage to be able to do that, and that will be passed on to consumers and to businesses. So I would encourage when the Republican folks come up here, they tell us what they're doing to talk to the Trump administration about bringing some sanity back to the budgeting situation. Work with us on getting tax cuts put in place for the middle class here in Minnesota, making sure that we're continuing to invest in our education, make sure we're investing in transportation, that we have those dedicated costs, and continue to see a growth economy that we've seen in Minnesota coming out of the pandemic. With that, I'd be glad to take some questions. Yeah, and as you see, it's around the edges with, when you're talking numbers this big, it's around the edges with the inflation. This was, I believe, predicated on February 10th data, if I'm not mistaken. And as I said, we've had 3 changes in 24 hours to tariffs numbers that have come out. I don't know if we're all getting used to insanity being the norm now, but that is not normal behavior. So what I would say on this is we've got a couple weeks. We will come back. We are not going to chase the chaos. We are going to predicate it on the real numbers that we have, which is this. And I think what you'll see us, we'll come back with those numbers. They will balance as we always do. But I think the base of that budget is now more important than ever to make sure that we're containing those costs in the areas that are driving over the horizon and continue to invest in the things that make us our growth.
Governor, this doesn't have the federal cuts, freezes, layoffs.
No.
The federal government's a top 10 employer, or was a top 10 employer in the state. Do you have a sense of the scale of the layoffs?
Well, and you heard this, that 80,000 at the VA. It's 438,000 at the VA. If somebody comes up to you and tells you, oh, that's not all doctors. Really? People that wash the linens, that keep our veterans safe? The people that do the procurement on the drugs? The people that fix the maintenance system in the building? And somebody who's never served, a billionaire, goes in with an 18-year-old and decides 80,000 of those people aren't worthwhile? This is nuts. And we got to stay balanced here. Well, Governor, there's probably some of those jobs. Yeah, probably. Which ones? You tell me. Show me names, show numbers. So yes, I am deeply concerned. Here in Minnesota, someone tell me if I'm forgetting this numbers at 22,000, I believe, of federal workers, I think, about what we have spread across from the national parks to the weather service to other things. Yes, it will be dramatic with these people going out. Now, the one thing is I'm going to say is we value that. We are aggressively looking if we can hire people into Minnesota, if we can hire them both into state government or we can hire them into the private sector. We're encouraging people to look to Minnesota as a landing spot, but man, it's tough. So yeah, it's a significant impact. And you heard Commissioner Campbell say this. If the budget that they put forward and they voted on goes through, $1.2 to $1.6 billion. And that impact, again, because all the things, if you want to come up here and, the make-believe stuff that the president was saying money was being spent on, that's the fringe on the side. This is Medicare. This is Medicaid. This is transportation funding. And the impact on it, as you heard, a third of our budget. And we in Minnesota are one of the least dependent states on the federal government. And the impact, as Mary mentioned, it will be dramatic. And again, I hope we don't lose this. There's a macro impact of this, which is Dr. Becker's job to tell us on. I think it's our job as elected officials. This is the micro. That's a family. that worked hard to serve this country, serve this state, and they are being told that they are not valued and being told to say, you know, list 5 things that you did this week.
When you say hire some of these workers with the state government, are you talking about vacancies or?
If we have vacancies open, yeah. If we have experts in we have state veterans homes that we're always trying to find people in. If we have folks that know how to care for veterans, we would look to try and do that. But it's hard to absorb it. Now, look, folks are looking for workers, but these are professionals that are being let go.
Governor, beyond the federal stuff, you've got the forecast showing even more growth with HHS, education, special education, disability waivers. Do you foresee having to have even stronger curbing of that growth as
Well, I think that's what we'll get into. And I think it's because this is reasonable, it's stretched over the 2 bienniums where we get a handle on this, where we don't have that rainy day. It's not a crisis. There's time to do this because everyone here and every legislator that stands in front of you is going to have to recognize that if we don't do this, it will be there. And as I've said, it'll be 1/8 of the budget by 2028, 29. It'll be about half the budget by 2035. I think this path is still there. This is a relatively small on the edges of this to be able to adjust. So I don't think we're going to be asked for any more. And again, the goal of that is not stopping or cutting, curbing growth to fit within where our revenues are. And again, we have an opportunity here to tackle this on the front end so that we don't have to have the crisis situation or the rainy day. So I got one here and then I'll go to the back. Esme? Well, certainly because not in this biennium, we don't have that. We have a surplus. We have a $2 billion surplus we'll end with. This is the over the horizon. And again, if you use that as one-time spending, the cost drivers I'm talking about, you could put $10 billion in one time in it, and all you're doing is prolonging it, and it will be worse when it comes out of that. So we're certainly will do what we can, but I just think if you see the $1.6 billion cut on the conservative side of this, if Minnesota uses half of our surplus to put into that to try and protect, when the real crisis comes on March 14th, if they shut down the government, or if they choose to cut into other things, I think our analysis of this is this could get far worse. We're not in a crisis right now. We're not in a rainy day. Well, I would have our folks come up. We've been through this exercise before. It was Commissioner Franz at the time where our teams will start and they already are on the periphery looking at this. They will start planning what that looks like on the loss of receipts that we're going to receive and all of that. We had to do this back, I believe, was it 2019 when we had this situation when they did shut down. That planning is started now. It will increase dramatically if it looks like it, and I think it doesn't appear to me like they're moving towards a workable solution. But we will be ready for that, and then we'll put out as soon as we can, as we did last time, what those impacts will be. I'll go to the back, Evan. I'm going clear to the back first. Go ahead. Yeah. That's interesting. The interesting point. The point is with the uncertainty we have, and we do 2-year budgets, I see some accomplished legislators sitting here that I'm going to use my chance to let them maybe talk about this. They do have the experience in this, but I think your point, Evan, is well taken, meaning we do the biennium budgets and then we come back and we do basically off-year policy and bonding or whatever. In today's modern world with the uncertainty, does that make sense? I will defer to the legislators, but I think it's a question we should ask because I do, and it's one that, you know, it got out. I'm not going to say it. Do you do more forecasts? And obviously we have this question. No, not necessarily, but I think all of you get what we're at here. This happened in November. We come out with a forecast and we said, well, there was an election, there'll be changes, won't February look different? Well, here we are, yes. So I hear you. I think it's worth considering. I think, again, that it begs that question, What happens if you do a budget, the legislature starts working, and the federal government makes more massive changes? I think the answer to that is we cross that bridge when we get there. So. You do that when you're a billionaire because it doesn't really impact you.
Man, it doesn't impact his ass either. And that's the one crazy part. None of this shit does, because in my eyes, if it impacted them, let's discuss it. Let's have discussions. But I see a lot of these things in Minnesota. They don't involve them. They like to have their hands in them, but they don't involve them. Now, I want to talk about, there was a bill yesterday that Democrats tried to get in. I should say Republicans tried to get in, and it was the duty to retreat bill, right? And that's what I want to discuss that a little bit. So they had a press conference yesterday. It's not long, it's about 8 minutes. But I want to play that, and I want to show you what this was about. I don't honestly feel like we have laws and you just need to abide by them. And until we honestly do that, we shouldn't be amending or adding or repealing anything, because a lot of it, we like to ignore the situation and care more about politics than personal, like perpetrators and victims and honestly what's really going on. So with that being said, I want to get into this press conference.
Mounds View, Shoreview, New Brighton. I am the DFL lead on the Public Safety Committee. Instead of addressing how the Trump administration is harming our state economy and the lives of Minnesotans, the Republicans in the House are bringing another bill that does not have the votes to pass off the House floor and that makes Minnesotans less safe. In states where stand your ground or shoot first laws have been adopted, there has been an increase in firearm homicides, and they result in racial disparities, as others will discuss in a minute. By attempting to eliminate the duty to retreat standard in Minnesota's self-defense law, the Republicans are eliminating a rule that has existed in Minnesota for around 150 years. Under the current law, before using force against someone outside of your home in Minnesota, you must retreat if reasonably possible. This de-escalates rather than escalates potentially dangerous situations. That is the standard, and that should remain the standard. And we've got some other speakers up next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Maggie Emery, and I'm the Executive Director of Protect Minnesota, which is the only state-based, statewide gun violence prevention organization in our state. I'm here today to express our strong opposition to the proposed Shoot First legislation, which would legalize unnecessary violence, increase gun deaths, and deepen disparities in Minnesota. The evidence is clear. Shoot First laws do not make communities safer. Instead, they escalate violence. Studies show that these laws are associated with higher homicide rates. In Florida, where Shoot First has been the law for nearly 2 decades, firearm homicides increased by 32% after implementation. We cannot afford a policy that will bring more deadly encounters to Minnesota during a time when gun violence has already risen sharply. These laws embolden aggression instead of promoting de-escalation. We've seen far too many tragedies under this law where minor conflicts over things like parking spaces and neighborhood jogs turn fatal because individuals feel empowered to shoot instead of seeking resolution. And let's be clear, this law would not be applied evenly. Research shows that white shooters who kill black victims are 350% more likely to be justified under Shoot First laws. We cannot allow policies that deepen disparities and put black and brown Minnesotans at greater risk. This legislation also threatens law enforcement, making it harder to hold perpetrators accountable and putting officers in greater danger when responding to incidents. It creates a chaotic, dangerous environment for everyone. Finally, let's talk about the impact on our youth. A study found after Florida enacted this law, homicides among teenagers increased by 45%. Gun violence is already the leading cause of death for children and teens in this country. Do Republican legislators really want to make that worse? Minnesota has always taken public safety seriously. We should not now import failed policies that have made other states more dangerous. I urge our lawmakers to reject this reckless legislation and focus on real solutions that reduce violence and keep our communities safe.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Susie Kaufman, and I am the Minnesota Moms Demand Action chapter leader. Thank you very much to all of the members of the House who are here today for standing up against this dangerous policy. HF 13 is a dangerous gun bill that will roll back current safety protections in Minnesota and make it so that individuals can use force, deadly force, in certain situations, even when they could safely walk away. The introduction of this bill and bills like it, which attempt to erode Minnesota's already existing self-defense law, beg the question, what problem are we solving for? And is the attempt to erode this doctrine a solution in search of a problem? Traditional self-defense laws, like Minnesota's current existing law, do not prohibit a person from using deadly force if they believe it is necessary to protect against serious harm. It merely requires a person to take an alternative course of action when they are in a threatening situation outside of their home, if they know they can do so safely. Traditional self-defense principles reflect the value of life. They recognize that it is best to avoid killing another human being if possible, while still giving a person the right to protect themselves if necessary. As a Minnesotan, as a mom, and a former high school teacher, it is disappointing to see attempts to dismantle our existing public safety laws gain traction in the Minnesota State House. Thinking back to the tragic shootings of Trayvon Martin in Florida and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, laws that dismantle our existing self-defense laws, like stand your ground or shoot first laws, promote dangerous vigilantism by encouraging people to use deadly violence as a first, not a last resort. They allow people to shoot first and ask questions later. Our state does not need any more division, and bills like HF 13 only stoke fear and division. I hope lawmakers today take a decisive stand against policies that harm everyday Minnesotans and instead focus on measures that will make a positive difference in our lives. Thank you.
Hello, I'm State Representative Dave Pinto. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Minnesotans deserve to be safe in their communities and in our state, which is why House Democrats passed strong gun violence prevention measures to keep more Minnesotans safe. To dismantle these laws now and to allow people to shoot first and ask questions later would roll back the progress that we have made for Minnesotans and their families. Minnesota's self-defense laws work. They protect us while valuing life. The use of deadly force should be a last resort, and we shouldn't pass laws that encourage someone to use vigilante instincts even when they have the opportunity to walk away safely. Gun violence continues to be the #1 cause of death for children other than infants in the United States. We do not have a safe retreat epidemic in our state and our country. We have a gun violence epidemic. This bill will not pass the House floor. Republicans should be working with Democrats to make life more affordable for Minnesotans and to work with us to deal with the chaos and the costs and cruelty coming out of the Trump administration. Instead, they are bringing up bills that are partisan, that will not pass, and will make us less safe, and that is deeply regrettable. I believe that we are ready for questions, if there are any.
The sponsor of the bill said that this is a reaction to the Supreme Court case from last year concerning due to retreat for brandishing a weapon. Am I understanding that this bill goes beyond rolling that ruling?
Yes, that is correct. So the court ruling in that case, the majority upheld that there was a duty to retreat under the facts and circumstances of that case. There was a dissent, and so instead of the Republicans are really relying on that dissent, but they're actually going much further than that dissent even went, and it was very specific to the facts of that case involving assault and the threat of assault. And even Justice Thiessen in his dissent said, under my proposed approach, the duty to retreat before harming someone still applies. Under the Republicans' approach, that isn't the case.
I agree.
They're getting rid of completely the duty to retreat in all circumstances.
I'll maybe just add to that repeatedly.
I don't even agree with this bill. I don't even like the fact that Democrats are saying anything about it, because y'all don't even want to talk about the fraud and waste that is going on in our communities that your policies allowed. I found this video from 1992 of Tupac talking, and I think a lot of it is still relevant. I want to get into this video of Tupac during an interview.
All right, let's stop that.
this world is such a and when I say this world, I mean it. I don't mean in an ideal sense. I mean in every day, every little thing you do. It's such a gimme, gimme, gimme. Everybody back off. You know, everybody's like, you taught that from school, everywhere. Big business. You want to be successful? You want to be like Trump? Gimme, gimme, gimme. Push, 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 push. Step, step, step. Crush, crush, crush. That's how it all is. And it's like, nobody ever stopped. Just, you know, I feel like instead of us just being like, slavery's bad, slavery's down, bad whitey, bad whitey. I mean, all right, let's stop that. And everybody's smart enough to know that, I mean, we've been slighted. And we want ours. And I don't mean by like ours, 40 acres and a mule, because we passed that. But we need help. I mean, for us to be on our own 2 feet, us meaning youth or us meaning black people, whatever you want to take it for us to be on our own 2 feet, we do need help. Because we have been here. We have been a good friend. If you want to make it a relationship type thing, we have been there. And now we deserve our payback. It's like you got a friend that you don't never look out for. You know, you dressed up in jewels. Now America's got jewels and they paid and everything. And they lending money to everybody except us. And it's like, you know, everybody need a little help on their way to being, you know, self-reliant. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole thing about the album, about the Special Olympics. Everybody need a little something and they to be independent. No independent person just grew up and was born independent. You worked and you learned teamwork and you learned cooperation and unity and struggle, and then you became independent. And we have to teach that and instill that. And why is it that they want to do that? I mean, if this is truly a melting pot in the country where we care about it, and Lady Liberty got a hand like this, she really loves us, then we really need to be like that. And it needs to be the black kids. If there's a white person who got money, then he need to help them. He need to help black kids, Mexican kids, Korean kids, whatever. But it need to be real. And it need to be before we all die and then you say, oh, I made a mistake. We should have gave them some money. We really should have helped these folks. It's going to be too late. You know what I'm saying? And then that's when you got to pay your own karma. And that's when God make you punish. When God punishes you. Because I feel like, you know, there's too much money here. I mean, nobody should be hitting lotto for 36 million and we got people starving in the streets. That is not idealistic. That's just real. That is just stupid. There's no way Michael Jackson should have, or whoever Jackson, should have $1 million, $1 billion, and then there's people starving. There's no way. There's no way that these people should own planes and their people don't have houses, apartments, shacks, drawers, pants. If they earned it, then I think that's good, and I think that they deserve it. But even if you earned it, you still owe. Because look at me, I don't have that mega money, but I feel guilty walking by somebody. I got to give them some mail. And if I know I got $3,000 in my pocket, I feel like it's wrong to give that person a quarter or $1. It's wrong. Only you know what you got in your pocket. And that's wrong. No matter what they do, if they take it and drink it, they take it and drink it. But, I mean, you got. You understand? And we all know how hard it is. It's not about if you good or you bad. It's not about if you good or you bad. We know that because he don't got don't mean he was bad. Or don't mean he's a criminal. Or don't mean he's crazy or a drug addict. Or none of that. It just means he don't got. And ain't it bad that you got 30? I mean, can you imagine somebody having $32 million? $32 million. And this person has nothing. And you can sleep. You can still go to the movies about, I mean, and then these are the type of people that get humanitarian awards. Millionaires. How can they be humanitarians by the fact that they millionaires and there's so many poor people shows how unhumane they are. You know what I'm saying? And that bugs me. Not saying that when I'm never going to be rich, and you know what I'm saying? But I'm saying it's a struggle, and I think everybody deserves. And I think there's a way to pay these people. I think there is a way. It just takes to be revolutionary. And it takes to do something out of the ordinary. You know what I'm saying? Like,
out of the ordinary.
I think that if we just said, okay, I got an idea. No more porno buildings. You know what I'm saying? Let's build houses. Or no more polo games. Let's build houses for poor people. You know what I'm saying? Or, look, okay, I know you're rich. I know you got $40 billion. But can you just keep it to one house? You only need one house. And if you only got 2 kids, can you just keep it to 2 rooms? I mean, why have 52 rooms and you know there's somebody with no room? It just don't make sense to me. It don't. And then these people celebrate Christmas. They got big trees, huge trees, all the little trimmings. Everybody got gifts, and then somebody's starving.
Right.
And they're having a white Christmas. They're having a great Christmas. Eggnog and
Christmas. Right. Well, that was so... to be honest, that was so that was deep to me, at least. And I found another video This the Democrat. Choose your fighters. I'm gonna play again. This shit crazy. AOC, Laverne Underwood, Catherine Clark, Judy Chu, Jasmine Crockett, Susie Lee. This shit wild, man. And it's like people have taken, you know, some of this as a joke to better our lives. And, you know, a lot of this, people don't understand history. I don't either. I'm a work in progress. I learn better every day. I learn more every day. And I'm just tired of people ignoring what's going on in our world and what we're facing. And it's come such a political factor that it really shouldn't be. It should be about the embetterment and how we better people. How do we make this community that looks like crap, that looks like shit, and make it into something? How do we turn nothing into something? And we got to come together. I'm going to keep on saying that. You know what I'm saying? We got to come together, no matter about our personal issues, you know, because a lot of it, they're not even personal. It's that y'all have done bad shit, and then people have talked about it, and instead of being accountable and responsible for it, you turn the other cheek. And what I mean by turn the other cheek is you and your cronies and your followers, you ignore it. You say that it's not true, but at the end of the day, it's true. You just don't really want to face that repercussions, that spotlight, because you know you've done wrong. And with that being said, man, I hope y'all have a great rest of your, you know, it's the weekend coming up, it's Friday. So I hope that everybody enjoys their Friday. Thank God that it's TGIF. I will be back tomorrow. I'll do something with Robert Crazy Wassman on Twitter and YouTube. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope everybody was educated. And just know that we talk about 40 acres and a mule, but we never received that. And with that being said, win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell, wish me well, and I'll see y'all Monday.
Baby, you 99 created plan. Soon as your water falls, I just need a drink. Wanna put you in your place right here, right now. So let's slow it down and relax and get closer. Then I'll take it out, let you taste your composure. Know what you doing, take a seat and I fold her. Pretty brown eyes, you got it sold up. Ooh, I just love that.